Do you remember in the old Star Trek episodes, at one point Captain Kirk would always say, "Engines at warp speed, Scotty." And Scotty would answer back, "But the engines can't take it anymore, Captain." Well, ever since then, the word warp has stood for fast and powerful. No surprise then, when IBM was looking for a new pop name for OS2, it decided to adopt the word warp. Is OS2 fast and powerful? Is it more powerful than the new Windows 95? We'll try to get answers to those questions today as we take a look at the new OS2 on this edition of the Computer Chronicles.
Computer Chronicles is made possible in part by Hewlett-Packard, working with industry leaders to ensure compatibility across the board and across the network. HP PCs, you're looking at partnership in a whole new light.
Additional funding provided by the SPA, presenting the Excellence in Software Awards March 13th.
Hi, and welcome to the Computer Chronicles. I'm Stuart Chaffee, and with me today is Nicholas Petrelli, Executive Editor with InfoWorld Labs. Nick, welcome.
Thank you.
Nick, I guess the issue on the minds of most users is, should I try OS2Warp? Most people are using Windows 3.1 right now. Should I wait around and buy Windows 95? We have both of them up and running here. This is a beta version of Win95, OS2Warp over here. Give us just a brief introduction to those two interfaces.
Okay, Windows 95 is for people who are sold on Windows and they want to run Windows applications. The 95 refers to the year they expect it to ship. Technologically, I would call it about Windows 92. It's more like Windows 3.1 on steroids. It's based on a very easy-to-use interface. It's got a bunch of cascading menus where you select the application. When you have applications running, it puts it on the taskbar here so that you can
It's easy to go up and back from app to app.
Exactly. OS2, on the other hand, is more difficult to get used to at first, but it has a more powerful desktop. It's very object-oriented in its nature. Built a lot around things like templates, where if you want to create a new folder on your desktop, you would you'd pull off a sticky folder there and create it on the desktop. And you drag and drop your items into the desktop. Now, this can be turned into a template so that if you're using a template type style letter, you can tell it that it's a template.
So take anything it's created, make it a template.
Exactly.
Which is a handy thing.
And so you can just drag and drop this across and you create a new letter with the basic properties of the first letter. Same thing with the folder. There are settings you can use to change the behavior of a folder. So if you want this to become a work area and you have this letter open while you're using this folder, you close the folder and it closes the letter. Open the folder, and it opens the letter.
Goes back to where
So it
you were,
restores
yeah.
you to whatever state you were when you actually closed that folder.
And you get all kinds of cool warp sounds.
Exactly.
Too. Okay. Today we'll look at OS2Warp to see what everyone's talking about and help you decide if you should consider using Warp. Now, IBM has made a lot of noise about Warp, trying to take advantage of the delay in the release of Windows 95. We're going to start with a look at how a basically boring thing like an operating system can become the subject of a worldwide publicity campaign.
I gotta tell you, when I first heard about Kodiak Island, Alaska, the image of high-tech didn't exactly come to mind. I mean, it is the second largest island in the United States, but there's almost as many bears as there are people.
When IBM was ready to launch its latest version of OS2, the company's approach was hardly low-key. Instead, IBM mounted a massive advertising and public relations campaign, including a trip around the world to visit OS2 users and a splashy New York stage show that featured Leonard Nimoy and a Star Trek theme.
Computer,
Ready.
lock on to coordinates for IBM Senior Vice President and Group Executive, Bob Labonte.
Why all the noise to introduce a new version of an existing product? IBM says that's just what they had to counter: noise.
We are still competing in a market that has a lot of noise about the next version of Windows, that has a lot of anticipation, and we delivered it first. And so how do you announce that in an environment where there's lots of noise? What do you do to tell the world, we're here first?
IBM also faced the challenge of convincing end users that the new OS2 Warp was not a big, complicated product, better suited for corporate and scientific work than everyday small office jobs. but the emphasis on ease of use was so effective that some people started to wonder about the new version.
Kind of an interesting consequence of that is that there was some perception in the market after the launch that somehow it was less than it used to be. I mean, we were so successful at reaching end users with a message about this is why you want to use this product, that some of our corporate customers said, now, is everything still there that used to be?
While IBM's main goal may be to show once reluctant users that OS2Warp is now a genuine alternative to Windows, the company also saw the Windows 95 delay as a rare opportunity, a chance to fill a gap left wide open by Microsoft.
What Microsoft is doing with Windows 95 is creating a gap in the market. They're basically telling all the users of Windows, all those 60 million users, those famous 60 million users, that what you have isn't good. So you need something new. They're telling everybody that. So they're telling the market what you have is not good enough. You need something new. And that, you know, all the market researchers call that a chasm or a market gap. And that's when things can happen. That's when a smart competitor can take share.
For the Computer Chronicles, I'm Giles Bateman.
So let's take a careful look at OS2Warp. Here to help us is IBM's Warp guru, the man they call Mr. OS2, David Barnes. Welcome, David.
Thanks.
All right, when we talked a little bit before with Nick was a fan of OS2. He thought Warp was pretty cool, but he said you do have to learn how to use it. So you've got to justify to me, number one, why I should spend the time learning, and how you make it easy for me to learn to use Warp.
We have done a lot of things in this version of OS2 in Warp to make it easier to use because we understood that. And so some of the things that we've done that are pretty neat, every object on the screen, as he had mentioned, has a pop-up menu. So if you click on anything with the right mouse button, there's a pop-up menu. One of the menu items is always help. So no matter where you are, you can click with the right mouse button and get to help. In that same vein, if we look into OS2, all of the documentation is all here on your hard disk. Now you could get it off there if you needed the room, but the idea is if you happen to lose the books, that's all right.
All your manuals are with you if you want them with you.
Everything, right. Now, here's the neatest part for a new user. It's a tutorial that's online, and it will introduce you to every aspect of OS2, from how to run applications to how to customize things. And while you're in here now, let's say I wanted to learn about changing colors. Here's how you do it, but I'm a Windows user, and I know how to do it in Windows. If you click down here on the Windows icon, it says, well, in OS2, the control panel is similar to the Windows colors option.
So it'll talk to you like a Windows user.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And if you get to be really good with OS2, you click on Expert, and it'll teach you tips and techniques for the special user.
All right, so it is easy to get in there, take the tutorial, figure out what you're doing.
Absolutely.
Let's go to some of the basics now, David. Launching a program in OS2.
There's a couple of different ways. One, I could just double-click on an icon. I like one click. And so what you can do is you can use the Launchpad down here, and the Launchpad puts on those frequently used programs. For example, if I want this whole folder of information that I showed before, I could drop it down here, put it where I wanted it, and now with one click, I can open that folder. If I wanted to put it on other parts, I could actually drop it down and put it on one of these so that it's a little bit easier to get to there. And so I have the things on my desktop that I use normally, and I get rid of the extra things because we found out a cluttered desktop is too hard to use for a lot of users. So this makes it a little bit easier for them.
All right, now one thing you're doing with Warp, which is kind of nice now, is you are bundling it with something you call the bonus pack. So it comes with a lot of capability built in, not just the operating system interface. What's in that bonus pack?
Well, before we show the bonus pack, I want you to remember that OS2 runs your DOS programs, and if you have Windows, it runs your Windows programs. And it uses real Windows, so it does it really, really well, right? What comes along with the bonus pack are OS2 programs, all the way from, well, here's a fax program, and I'll show you a little bit about it in a moment.
person to person, which allows me to do video teleconferencing, all packaged in. Here's a multimedia viewer, and what it will allow me to do is, if I want to listen to audio, now here's an audio file on my hard disk. I can just go ahead and click on the audio file, and while it plays that, let me go and look at a file. Let's say it's Kodak CD-ROM, and notice that while I did that, I can go ahead and work. So even while I'm off loading one file, I can go ahead and work with the system. And that's because of OS2's preemptive multitasking. The fact that I can be doing these things and it doesn't interfere with my other running programs. Okay? Other things in the bonus pack. Let's see, the multimedia that comes along will allow me to record and play back audio and record video.
Record video.
You can go to your local PC store, buy a card off the shelf, and OS2Warp will probably support it, so you can do recording of video. And here's the neat part, IBM Works. IBM Works has been for sale in Europe for quite a while. It's a real word processor, spreadsheet, database, real applications, not little ones. And it uses some of the features within OS2Warp. So if I've wanted to send a fax off, now here's a fax that I've already got addressed to someone. I know that because I've got a little icon in the corner that shows it's addressed. If I wanted to say add someone else's address to it, I drag and drop, and I've just added a second address. Now, when I drag this over to my fax, which happens to be in the launch pad, I go off and fax the document.
And that's it.
And that's it.
They're live objects. You don't have to go in there and actually do anything.
The user doesn't need to know this is object technology. But in fact, underneath the covers, OS2Warp took the phone number out of the address book and put it on the document.
All right, lastly, David, one of the cool things, everybody wants to get online and get in cyber world and get onto the internet. How do you do that with Warp? I think you guys have focused on that a bit.
We have a lot. It's called the Internet Connection for OS2. And what it allows me to do is, with a couple of clicks of the mouse, put in my name, address, phone number, I can use IBM's network to get on the internet, or I can use someone else as a service provider. And all of the graphical tools from Gopher, in fact, I've got a web explorer that's running right now.
So all that front-end net software is in that bonus pack.
And I never have to use a Unix command. It's pretty neat. And I think if you look at everything that's packaged along with OS2Warp, especially the internet stuff, and look at the price of this product, we are definitely bundling it to try to sell masses of the product.
All right, looks great. Thanks very much, David. All right, now one thing IBM is known for is its speech recognition work, so it's not surprising that one of the first add-ons to OS2Warp is a utility that lets you communicate with OS2 using only your voice. Here to show us Voice Pilot for Warp is David Slachter. How you doing, David?
Fine, thank you, Stuart.
All right, David, we've seen a lot of voice input stuff in the past on this show, and a lot of it is stuff I really wouldn't use to work with. I might play with it. Is Voice Pilot in Warp stuff you'd really work with?
Absolutely. This was an application that we designed from scratch to be used in the day-to-day business environment, not as a toy.
All right, so let's do a demo here again. Okay. Your hands are no mouse, no keyboard, okay?
Exactly.
You're just going to talk to the computer.
Exactly.
And show me some real-world practical uses of Voice Pilot with Warp.
Okay, here we go. Computer, calendar, April, next year, last year, this month, review week, next week, Thursday, add, time, 10 o'clock, end time, time, 11:15, description, engage, meeting, period, important meeting with Richard to discuss our pending contracts with IBM, period, I'll stop. No. I'll stop. Computer, PM. Okay. Finished. Finished. Address book. F. Update address. Address. Enter. 930 space MAIN space STREET. Info. Engage. This is an important entry into my address book, period. I'll stop. Computer. Okay. Finished. Notepad. New.
Engage. I wanted to write a note to my dad, comma, but I had a bad pad, period. That is too bad, comma, because now I have a better pad to write to my dad, period. I'll stop.
All right, so let me talk for a while it's doing its thing. You're dictating one word at a time, but you can go a lot faster than it appears the computer is at its recognition point because it's storing your voice input, catching up, doing the analyzing and coming out with it.
Absolutely correct.
All right, let's see. I wanted to write a note to my dad, but I had a bad pad. That is too bad because now I have a better one mistake, to write to my dad. Pretty good.
99%.
Okay, what I want to ask you now, is there something about the OS2 platform, is there something about that environment that makes this stuff work better? Is it better to do voice pilot in Warp? You chose to do it in Warp rather than a Windows or a DOS or whatever.
Absolutely. It was not an accident. When we decided to write this application, we consciously chose OS2Warp because we felt it was a much more powerful environment, gave us the tools to be able to create all of the things that you've seen in this application. In Windows, it would have been a much more difficult task to be able to accomplish.
Yeah, and I must say, David Barnes before just said he actually does use this to dictate
Yes, he does.
long memos, not short memos.
Yes, he does.
Because that's the most efficiency there.
Yes.
David, thanks very much. All right, most of the world does use Windows these days, and of course there's lots of software support for Windows. So why would you buy OS2 over Windows? We visited a small law firm in San Francisco and asked them the same question.
At the law firm of Collette and Erickson in San Francisco, large picture windows reveal spectacular views. Original artwork decorates the office walls and corridors, and almost every office has some kind of computer connected to a network. All of the machines are DOS and Windows based, all except one, the network server, which sits on Attorney John O'Neill's desk and runs OS2Warp.
Well, what I found was that it does multitask, and I found that it had advantages not just in not letting the network crash, but also I could do more than one thing at a time. I tend to do a lot of research, and I have CD-ROM research materials. They're DOS programs, and I run those, and when I launch an inquiry to search the CD-ROM, I'll launch the inquiry and then go do something else while it's spinning the CD-ROM and looking for the material that I've asked for.
Attorney O'Neill was also looking for a way to overcome the DOS 640K memory barrier. He discovered that OS2Warp would let him allocate as much or as little memory as he chose for Windows, DOS, and OS2 applications. While the operating system is slower to start and uses over 30 megabytes of hard disk space, John decided that OS2's greater stability tipped the scales in its favor. Now he would like to increase the OS2 presence in the office.
Well, I think it's easier to use than Windows. We have several secretaries here in the office who are used to using DOS programs only. And we've switched them over to Windows, and a lot of them have a problem with double-clicking to invoke an icon, to invoke a program. And I can see a Launchpad being very useful. And that's probably something Microsoft may come out with, but for right now, I think that would be a big advantage. And since we do use DOS programs here, OS2 does a great job of running DOS programs.
For the Computer Chronicles, I'm Giles Bateman.
One thing we all want from our PC these days is better management of multimedia and fewer problems running this stuff. One solution from a company called SPG is a product called ColorWorks written for OS2. Joel Krautheim is here to show it to us. Hi, Joel.
Hi.
I want to ask you about multi-threading. That's one of the features we hear about OS2, and it's a hard concept for some people to understand. Your program really takes advantage of that in a nice way. Demonstrate how ColorWorks takes advantage of multi-threading.
Sure, be happy to. Let's turn an effect on real quick, because then you'll be able to actually see what's going on in this image. Let's pick an inversion because it's easy to see. See our circle tool is selected, and what we'll do is we'll define a few circles to draw with the inversion effect on this image. You'll see that we continue to draw, select our tools, we can go up to the menu bar, reconfigure our tools with additional effects, open an image, send a print job, basically
so you're going
anything.
task to task to task, and we're not seeing an hourglass and waiting for something to happen.
Exactly. That's the promise of OS2, is liberation from that.
Okay.
Beyond what we've demonstrated here, which is single processor multi-thing, we can also multi-thread across multiple processors dynamically on an SMP computer. So if you had, say, 4 processors in your computer and 10 megabytes worth of image data to process. ColorWorks would send 2.5 megabytes of data simultaneously across each CPU for a 400% increase in total program performance. So it's dynamically multi-threaded all the way up to 64 processors if you happen to have that many.
Okay, show us some of the other features then of ColorWorks for OS2.
Sure. Our toolbar is a completely configurable toolbar, meaning there's no preset functions. Any tool can be used to draw with a color, selected from the color palette or a custom color, an effect, or any combination of currently in-use effects applied all at the same time. And also, if you go into mask mode, which is our selection mode, any drawing tool can be used as a selection tool. So it's completely configurable. So let's actually show you some of our effects. You'll see that ColorWorks has a host of professional photo retouching effects, and with some rather unique implementations. For instance, here we're going to work on the hue channel of the image. We see you provide the visual feedback of your in and out values rather than just the numerical values. Okay, if you want to overall shift the values within that channel, you simply hit the shift controls. It makes for a very easy manipulation of your individual red, green, blue, cyan, magenta, yellow, and HLS settings. In addition to color map adjustment, we do color correction, your brightness and contrast, dodging and burning. Now with ColorWorks, dodging and burning and cloning and redo, those types of functions are effects, not pre-canned tools.
And the benefit is?
You can apply it with any tool. Okay. We also have adjust histogram, a hue and saturation, which is another unique implementation with your hue and saturation shifts, and then you can limit the actual range of original canvas hues that you will shift on. We also have some unique filter labs. We have our sharpening, smoothing, noise reduction, edge detection. And with ColorWorks, these, what I call meat and potatoes image processing, are fully functional laboratories with multiple effects or algorithms to actually perform that simple task. An adjustable strength, whether or not you want to process all pixels you draw over, adjust those with a user set threshold above or below, and then within a certain segment of the tonal range for this particular image, shadows, midtones, and highlights. The tonal range for each image is set independently in the set tonal range. So for this particular image, this is considered your shadows, this segment is your highlights, and this is your midtones. So we just compressed our midtones right there for this image. So the effect menu commands look towards the set tonal range when you come across those types of settings, shadows, midtones, highlights. Here happens to be the edge detection, multiple methods of edge detection. If invert it if you want, set your tonal range. ColorWorks also does a texturization. You can save your own texture files as well as use some of our presets, make it look like droplets of water, make it look like a weave, etc. ColorWorks also does a pixel displacement.
Very powerful stuff, obviously. The question I have, again, bringing this back to OS2, a lot of the features you're showing me here in ColorWorks are really only possible riding on top of OS2, right? I mean, you couldn't do some of the stuff in Windows or even under the Mac.
Correct, Stuart. That's only OS2's multi-threading allows us to do what you're seeing here.
All right, thanks a lot. Great product. All right, so what should you do? Should you buy OS2? Should you wait around for Windows 95? We asked Dan Gilmore here to give us some answers. Dan is computing editor for the San Jose Mercury. First question I have for you is, as a typical user, I'm running my word processor, my spreadsheet, my database, playing a game. Do I care about this stuff? Does it matter to me whether I run under OS2 or run under Windows?
It does. The operating system is really key to how well your computer works, so you should care.
How about your personal opinion? I've talked to some analysts, some journalists, they love OS2. They think it's great. Other guys say, I wouldn't get near it. What do you think? I mean, go through the good points and the bad points.
Okay. I'm not into the religious war aspect of operating systems. I use it because it works best for me right now. If Windows 95, when it comes out, works better, I'll go to that. The pluses are really very, very good. The serious multitasking that you get is wonderful, and it's hard to go back to Windows once you've experienced that. The workplace shell I like a lot as an environment to work in. It's nice to configure, and the program manager in Windows, by contrast, is awful. The Internet Access Kit and the other applications that are bundled with it make it a very good deal, and they all work quite well as far as I can tell. On the downside, the installation's still not good enough. It needs to be improved. The hardware support definitely needs to be improved. There needs to be compression built in, disk compression out of the box, and like Windows itself, it really should have 8 megabytes, not 4.
What's your sort of bottom line advice to a typical computer user consumer? I mean, should you go out and, it's not that expensive, go out and try Warp? Is there something there, or just sit around and wait for Win95?
I think it's worth a try, but I also would say I wouldn't buy any brand new operating system for a few months after it was released anyway, because I don't like being
Let somebody else suffer through version 1.0. Huh?
That's right.
Finally, is this all about trying to get the Macintosh interface onto a PC? Is the Windows OS2 battle just really trying to get that Mac ease of use?
In some ways, yes. The ease of use is very important, but the Mac does not equal the multitasking right now in OS2. So there are some actual advantages.
All right, good advice. Thanks a lot, Dan.
Glad to do.
All right, that's our look at OS2Warp. I hope we helped a little bit in getting you to understand what these operating system wars are all about. If you'd like to know more about OS2 or any of the software programs on this show, drop by our Computers on Television forum on CompuServe. The command is Go Chronicles. Thanks for joining us. I'm Stuart Chaffee. See you here next time on the Computer Chronicles.